severe in their love for Allah. Why are they more severe? Their love is more severe because it's completely directed to Allah alone. It's not split. When it's split, it becomes diluted and less. You have to share it. But the believers, there's no sharing. That worship is directly for Allah. You see that even in the Hajj. The mushrikeen, they used to do Hajj. But when they used to do Hajj, when we do Hajj, the believers, then you say, Labbaik Allahumma labbaik, labbaik, la sharika laka labbaik. La sharika laka labbaik. You have no partner whatsoever. La sharika laka. The mushrikeen, they used to say that too. Labbaik Allahumma labbaik, labbaik, la sharika laka labbaik. But then they would add their own addition onto it. They would add their own addition, which is labbaik Allahumma labbaik, labbaik, la sharika laka labbaik, illa sharikun huwa lak, tamlikuhu wa ma malakak. They would say, we affirm that you are alone, you have no partners. You have no partners, except maybe a partner you do have, but you control him and he doesn't control you. So they would add this addition onto their talbiyah. This was the mushrikeen. They worshipped. As Shaykh Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahab mentioned in another one of his books, Kashf al-Shubuhat, that they used to worship Allah, they used to give in charity, they used to go make Hajj. But all of that worship of theirs was not sincerely for the sake of Allah, it was split. So when the different people, nations and groups, when they split their worship between Allah and these other deities, the uluhiyah was broken. And that's where the conflict occurred between them and their prophets. Their prophets and messengers told them, you must worship Allah alone to be successful, not to split the worship between Allah and these other deities. The final aspect of Tawheed is Tawheed al-Asma wa Sifat, the names and attributes of Allah. So we know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has names and attributes, descriptions. Because indeed, as Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah, we do not be like the people of innovation who go to extremes. Rather, Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah are in the middle path always. The people of innovation, they went to extremes. So you have on one side Al-Mu'attilah, who said that when it comes to the names and attributes of Allah, they said Allah doesn't have any names or attributes. They said, how can you say Allah has names, Ar-Rahman, Ar-Rahim? How can you say Allah has attributes, the hands, the eyes? How can you say these things about Allah? Allah doesn't have any of that, they said. So Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah said, these people, who is their God then? Who is their deity that they worship? Who is Allah to them? Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah mentioned that these Mu'attilah, these people of innovation who reject the names and attributes of Allah, their Lord is nothingness. Because something which doesn't have any descriptions, then how do you describe it? If I say to you, describe to me thin air, describe it. How do you describe, if I say to you, describe to me nothingness? Describe to me, tell me what nothing looks like. How would you describe that to me? What description would you give to me if I say to you, tell me what nothing looks like? Tell me how heavy nothing is. Tell me how wide nothing is. Tell me what color nothing is. It has no descriptions. So when they say Allah has no names or attributes, it's as if they are worshipping nothingness. On the other extreme, you have the mushabbiha. They say Allah's names and attributes, they are just like ours. So if Allah says He has a hand, they must be like our hands. Allah says He has eyes, they must be like our eyes. They went to that extreme. So it's as if they are worshipping an idol. It's as if they made an idol for themselves. They picture Allah to be in a certain way. Whereas Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah, the correct methodology when it comes to the names and attributes of Allah is that we affirm that Allah has names and attributes. نَصِفُ اللَّهَ بِمَا وَصَفَ بِهِ نَفْسَهُ, as Shaykh al-Islam said in Al-Aqidah al-Wasatiyah. We affirm to Allah that which He affirmed for Himself. We describe Allah with that which He described Himself. And we negate from Allah that which He negated from Himself. So Allah negated certain things from Himself too. لَا تَأْخُذُهُ سِنَةٌ وَلَا نَوْمٌ. Slumber and tiredness and sleep does not overcome Allah. So we negate that from Allah. But those names and attributes that Allah has affirmed for Himself, then we affirm them. But without falling into four prohibitions, which is tahrif. We don't try to distort or alter the meanings of the names and attributes of Allah to match our intellects, which is what the people of innovation, they do. For them, the religion is their intellect. If the Quran and the Sunnah matches their intellect, then they will accept it. But if there's anything in the Quran and the Sunnah which goes against their logic, they won't accept it. That's a principle they have. تَقْدِيمُ الْعَقْلِ عَلَى النَّقْلِ. Precedence or priority of the mind, of the intellect, over the texts. If the ayat and the hadith make sense with your mind, they'll accept it. If not, they won't. So that's where they deviated. That's why the hadith of Ali ibn Abi Talib, he said, لو كان الدين بالرأي لكان المسح على باطن الخف أولى من ظاهره. That if this religion was based upon logic, then wiping over the bottom of the sock, the leather sock or the other socks that take its place, wiping over the bottom of them would be more logical than wiping over the top. When you have your socks on, when you've made the wudu and you put your socks on, then your wudu breaks, you can wipe over your socks. If the religion was based upon intellect and logic, then intellect and logic would dictate to you that if you've been wearing your socks now, you're going to make wudu, you're going to wipe on them. Which side should you wipe on? The bottom side. That's the side that you walk on. That's the side where all the dust collects. Why wipe on the top side where there's no dust, no nothing? Wipe on the bottom side. Get rid of the dust and the bits and bobs that have collected on the bottom side of your socks. Logic would tell you that. But the religion is not based upon logic and intellect. The religion is based upon what the two revelations tell you. The Quran and the Sunnah, upon the understanding of the Salaf. That's why the Prophet said, تَرَكْتُ فِيكُمْ شَيْئَيْنِ مَا إِن تَمَسَّكْتُمْ بِهِمَا لَن تَضِلُّوا. I've left these two things between you. As long as you stick onto them, you won't go astray. The Quran and the Sunnah. So the people of innovation, they strayed when it came to the names and attributes. But as Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah, we accept them without distortion or alteration, without ta'til also, without rejecting them. We affirm them and we accept them. And also without takyif, without trying to give descriptions. So when you see in the Quran, Allah says He has a hand, Allah says He has eyes, etc. Hands, eyes, all these descriptions, then we affirm that. We say Allah has hands and eyes. But we do not attempt to imagine what they look like. We don't try to attempt to describe what they look like. And we don't try to make tamtheel, which is to compare them to creation. As Shaykh Muhammad bin Salih al-Uthaymeen, rahimahullah ta'ala, he said that the person who tries to imagine what the names and attributes of Allah look like, then he is a dhalul mubtadi'. He's a misguided innovator. So we do not attempt to imagine what they look like, but we affirm them as Allah has affirmed to Himself. As Allah stated in the Quran, وَلِلَّهِ الْأَسْمَاءُ الْحُسْنَى فَادْعُوهُ بِهَا. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the most beautiful of names, so call upon Him via those names. That therefore is an introduction to Tawheed. That's what Tawheed is. That is Tawheed, the definition of it, and what the three categories of it are. Shirk therefore is quite simply that which opposes those categories. The one who therefore claims that there are other participants in the creation, in the control of the earth, the heavens, the life and death, that is shirk in rububiyyah. The one who divides his worship between Allah and the others, shirk in al-uluhiyyah. The one who tries to give the names of Allah to their other deities, to their other gods, to other people, give those descriptions that are specific to Allah, those names that are specific to Allah, to other deities, that is shirk in the names and attributes. As the mushrikeen they did. So the mushrikeen, they had idols. From amongst them, they had the idols that Allah mentioned in the Quran. أَفَرَأَيْتُمُ اللَّاتَ وَالْعُزَّى وَالْمَنَاةَ ثَالِثَةَ الْأُخْرَى. Have you seen Al-Lat, Wal-Uzza, Wal-Manat? Those are three from amongst the idols that they had. Al-Lat, there's two definitions of it. Al-Lat was one of their idols. One explanation of it is that it was a smooth stone with some engravings on it. A smooth rock, and they had some engravings on it, and they would worship that rock. That was Lat. There's another definition of Al-Lat, if you pronounce it with a heavy ta, and that was a righteous man who used to help the Hujjaj and give them siwak and give them food. So when he died, they built a shrine upon his grave, and they began to worship him. That was Lat. But the point being, that was one of their idols, Lat. Where did the name Lat come from? They took that from the name of Allah, Allah. They distorted Allah into Lat, Al-Lat, from Allah. So that was their distortion of the name of Allah and giving it to their idols. Al-Uzza, Al-Uzza, what was Al-Uzza? It was one of their idols, but what was the description of Al-Uzza? What did Al-Uzza look like? Anyone know? Al-Uzza was another one of the idols of the mushrikeen. They say that it was a group of trees, 2 or 3 trees, in a circle or in a circular type of position, and there was curtains around them to make it like a shrine type of thing, a tent type of thing. Curtains wrapped around these like if you imagine 3 trees in a circle and curtains all around them. So you can't see what's in the middle of these 3 trees. And in the middle of the 3 trees, they mentioned that there was a woman, a naked woman with disheveled hair. She was a sorceress. And she used to call upon the jinn. So the people, the mushrikeen, they used to go to this shrine type of thing with the curtains around it, and they would call upon this deity of theirs, and they would hear voices from inside. This sorceress woman and the jinn that she used to bring. And so they believed this was one of their deities. And that was destroyed by Khalid ibn Walid when the Prophet ﷺ sent him. The narration is mentioned that the Prophet ﷺ sent Khalid ibn Walid to destroy Al-Uzza in the year 8 Hijri, when Makkah was conquered by the believers. So Khalid ibn Walid, he went and he chopped down the trees and he got rid of the curtains and everything, and he came back and he said to the Prophet ﷺ, I've done it. The Prophet ﷺ said to him, لَمْ تَفْعَلْ شَيْئًا. He said, you haven't done anything.